Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name, of course, is Seesaw or Chris, and today we are talking about World of Warcraft in 2020. Now, if you haven't been following along with the channel, well, first off, welcome to the channel. It's great to have you here. But one of the big things we've been doing in the past month is we've been checking out a bunch of different MMOs and how they're doing in 2020. Because one of the big things I love to do is play MMOs and bounce around between different games, and I may as well be playing games that are doing well. So if you haven't catched the last few, we've taken a look at Guild Wars 2, at Elder Scrolls Online, as well as Black Desert Online, and you'll probably see a playlist on the side if that interests you, but based on the fact that you clicked on this video, you're also probably quite interested in looking at World of Warcraft, so let's get into it. And I've been fairly positive so far with most of the videos I've made in 2020. The biggest negative so far has been Guild Wars 2, and that's been mostly because I've been disappointed in the past year, whereas I've seen them do quite well in other years. I do feel like they could bounce back, and I have hope and optimism. This is probably going to be a bit more negative than that, unfortunately. Specifically for the next year, I think WoW is going to have a rough 2020. I do know that there is the hope of the next expansion, and it is supposed to launch in 2020, and I do think it will launch in 2020, and hopefully it'll right a lot of wrongs, and we'll see a great launch at near the end of the year is when I would expect it to release. But between then, I think we're going to have a fair bit of waiting, which isn't really fun because, let's be honest, Battle for Azeroth has not been great. It kind of feels like we're in the state where the developers are like, okay, BFA was a miss, let's just work on the next expansion. And we've kind of seen that in the past as well, where we'll have one really good expansion, one really bad expansion that will be cut short, or the resources will be moved to the next expansion to try and right the ship. We've seen that with Legion, we've seen it in the past, and it sucks kind of being in the waiting stage because there's not a ton they can do for the game, and you're just banking on the future being great. So how is the game right now? Well, it's okay, it's playable, it's decent. The most recent patch, it's pretty good. There was a few bugs, there's a few issues. The biggest thing is the systems. The systems, they've tried to change how gearing works in Battle for Azeroth almost every major patch, and it seems like they're going back to the drawing board each time, and because of that, there really hasn't been a terribly large amount of improvement. Now, the only thing that I can hope is that each attempt has been looked at as a test, and with that in mind, they'll make the proper decision come Shadowlands. But it's not great for the people who have to experience it now. Now, we definitely need a fair bit more time to see how the corrupted gear plays out, how the new legendary cloak plays out, but it's a little bit disheartening being a part of that right now. The other side of this is that the actual gear itself, the way it looks, it's been a pretty big downgrade compared to other expansions. Now, I know that appearance is definitely subjective, and some people probably liked some pieces of gear way more in this expansion than they have in other expansions, but on the whole, given the fact that they've reduced the amount of gear sets that they're making, I wouldn't say the quality has improved. In fact, I think the quality has diminished. I think the game has lost a lot of what it did different than other games by removing class sets, and I know that it's become harder because they've added more classes to keep doing that, but I think when I think of World of Warcraft, when I think of some of the fondest memories I have of the game, it's always been trying to get that super cool class set that I see someone strolling around Stormwind or Orgrimmar with, and trying to attain that myself. And if you don't have that feeling, if you're just wearing transmog, and like even if you had the newest shiniest gear, you're still transmogging it, it takes away some of that reward. It makes it so that you're really just grinding numbers that are often focused on RNG, which is just even worse. So it makes it into a messy situation. Now, I should have started this video for the people who haven't followed this channel. I started playing World of Warcraft back in Wrath of the Lich King, about halfway through, probably when WoW was at its peak popularity. I say peak popularity, it's not necessarily the pinnacle of the gameplay by any means, but it's definitely when, if you were going to hear about World of Warcraft, you were probably going to hear about it then. And I've jumped in and out of the game a fair bit since then. I played till the end of Cataclysm. I left for Mist of Pandaria, which I regret, but you can't change the past. And then I really took a break until the start of Battle for Azeroth, so I was also sad that I missed Legion, but I had some negative feelings about the game, and I didn't suspect that they would right the ship completely, but Legion seemed to go over well, so I was then sold on Battle for Azeroth, and you can laugh at me all you want. That being said, there has been some shiny moments of the Battle for Azeroth journey. I do think, though, as a theme, it really hasn't it hasn't hit the mark. If you were to ask me, someone who, if I had no idea what the theme of this expansion was, and I was to describe it to you, I would have an incredibly difficult time describing the primary point of the expansion. Whereas if you asked me to describe Wrath of the Lich King, I probably would be able to do it a lot better, because a lot of the patches, or all of the patches almost, had to do with the Lich King and invading his land and taking it back and fighting against him. Whereas this patch, we've had some conflict between the Horde and the Alliance. We've had some dealings with death and Vol'jin and the Lich King and mysteries. We've had some exploration of new tribes and new alliances and new classes. We've had some dealings with old gods that have... The story progress of that chapter has gone extremely quickly, and we've had some dealings with genocide and stuff like that that is more tied, I guess, to conflict and war. But it's really hard to pinpoint an exact theme of the story. And although, title and marketing wise, you would say that it should have been the conflict between the Horde and the Alliance, I'm not completely convinced that that's what I felt. Now, they have introduced some systems to the game that have set up the game quite nice for 2020 and the future, such as there is a lot more world PvP, there's a lot more world activities that you can do, and alliance allied races that you can partake in. I think these are some really good elements that they've added to the game, but there's a lot that they've stripped away, such as PvP vendors and class design as well. Sorry, that's the other point that I had too. Class design has almost never been in a worse state, and it was such an unfortunate situation that coming right into the new expansion, they got a lot of negative feedback about the classes, and it was pretty much the point, hey, we can't do a ton until next expansion. And it's really hard because, an expansion is a really long time to wait to get some changes for the core gameplay of the game. And that's something that the game's going to have to deal with all the way until Shadowlands launches. And we haven't even heard of some great changes that are going to really make huge improvements in Shadowlands yet. There's still a lot of issues on the table that have not been confirmed fixed in Shadowlands, so there's a lot of questions up in the air. So yeah, it's a little bit of a rough time to play World of Warcraft. I'm not sure I would encourage a new player to play WoW or to continue jumping back into WoW, but there is one shining light that is World of Warcraft Classic. Because WoW is a pretty expensive game. You have to pay a sub fee, you have to buy the game. It's an expensive time, but one of the best decisions I think Blizzard made was that you get Classic WoW included in your sub fee, which in my mind, it's really like getting 2 games now for the price of 1. And sure, it's still a fair bit of money to shill out, but if you're someone who is interested in that old school gameplay, if you're someone who's interested in a gameplay that's been tested for so long and that's clearly had success and resonates with the community, you know, you found the right thing to play. And I think if you were someone who's interested in getting into World of Warcraft and you were trying to get into it right now, I would say try Classic WoW first. Maybe play that until we know some more information about Shadowlands and about how the game's going to approach that. I think if you're someone interested in the game, you should definitely check out Shadowlands. I never think you should pre-order something before it's sold you on any of the features, and even then you should wait until launch to try and really convince the developers to put their all into something. I think that's one of the most damning things that we've done in the gaming industry is just purchasing without really thinking about what it tells the developers, because between now and when Shadowlands launches, if they haven't seen that amount of pre-purchases, the effort they're going to be putting into it is going to be making sure that people who haven't purchased are convinced, hey, we should purchase it now. But yeah, so I think Classic WoW is definitely a great place to start. It's not for everyone. If you're not into a longer grind, a longer journey, and really appreciating the journey, because that's a huge part that goes into Classic WoW, is really enjoying each little step, you might not love it either. But that's my general thoughts on World of Warcraft. I'm sure other people have differing opinions. I'm sure some people love the current state of the game. And if you do have that, if you do think my opinions haven't been great, instead of just disliking and walking away, you know, share those down there. You know, dislike the video for sure. Toss that a downvote if you didn't like it, toss an upvote if you did like it, but share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Because as a fellow person who watches YouTube videos to try and get some opinions about games, I find it is those first few comments below that are almost more valuable than the video. And if you have something to offer that's great, I would love to read it myself and really understand your thoughts on the game and where it is right now and how it's going to do throughout the rest of the year. But yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit more serious, a little bit more negative, but I do think World of Warcraft is in that situation where it needs a bit of tough love to find itself again, because Battle for Azeroth was kind of waiting for letdown after letdown after letdown. And that's kind of how I would describe the patches. It was like, okay, this patch was a letdown. Let's really hope that the next patch brings everything we want. And then it was a letdown and a letdown. So let's really make sure that the next chapter of WoW isn't a letdown as best we can. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.